ado then, I'm going to introduce the speakers. First, we have Dr. Melanie Baker from mathematics, the Math and Computer Science Department. Then Professor Elizabeth Farbotnik from nursing. Dr. Jingzi Zhang from economics. Dr. Mary McDade from health and physical education. Dr. Christine Ryan from social work, and her colleague, Dr. Elaine Rinfret from social work. So I'm going to start by asking Dr. Baker if she can talk to us about her experiences in mathematics.
Sure. Well, I'm Dr. Baker. I'm Dr. Melanie Baker. I've been at Edinburgh since 2011. So I guess I'll kind of start with the obvious in that, like, we're just outnumbered as women in the STEM field. I didn't notice much of a difference in high school. I had lots of female math teachers, didn't really think anything of it. But then when I went to college, I didn't have a single math professor my entire 4 years of college. I did have some math education, from House and Education Department, and I had decided that I wanted to be a high school math teacher, so I was kind of double majoring. So I had some role models in the education department, but I was starting to get the feeling that maybe it wasn't for me, because when I started doing the field, I started feeling like, I don't know how I'm going to discipline people. I'm great with, doing the content, but I didn't really have any role models, anybody to really talk to about, what else can I do with math? So I just went with it and was like, oh, I'll figure it out. So I went as far as to take the GREs to consider grad school, but I mainly had two math professors, and the one met with me, as he got my score report from the GREs, and he's like, I didn't know you wanted to go to grad school. What have you been doing? You should have been doing research projects. We should have been doing this and that. You're never going to get in. And so even though I did get some supportive comments from the other professor, I just felt like, this isn't going to happen. So I took my degree and I taught middle school for a year, and it was enough for me to be like, oh, this is the nightmare that I thought it was going to be in terms of the discipline. So, I just kind of out of desperation applied to grad school. Again, I didn't have anybody to really talk to about how this process works or how to make myself stand out. So really, frankly, I got kind of lucky, I believe, in that I got accepted into a program and, got a assistantship and went with it. But again, I found myself in a program at a fairly large university with, I'd say, 20 tenured math faculty, and none of them were female. And so finally in my second to last year, they finally hired a female mathematician. And, it was just, again, like a kind of weird that there's a lack of role models. I'm a first generation college student. Nobody in my family, parents, grandparents, vast majority of my cousins don't have a 4-year degree. So I kind of had to just be a trailblazer and go through this. And, but I think that's kind of how this works. As a woman in STEM, you just got to push through and try and learn trial by fire. And yeah, so I think that, I guess I've just learned to find role models in different places and maybe outside of your field. And, so I found role models in computer science when I came here. We had 4 females at one point in time in computer science, three females, and now we're down to 0 in computer science. There are only 3 of us mathematicians, so out of a department of about 19, so we're still kind of in a minority there, but, just kind of pushing through and make my way. So I don't want to go over time, so I think that's about 5 minutes. So you're muted, Dr. Sullivan, you're muted.
Let me try that again. And thanks for the reminder. Next will be Professor Farbotnik from nursing.
Well, thanks everybody. So my experiences are probably a little opposite. As you can imagine, being in nursing, we're about over 4 million nurses in the United States currently, and only about 10% of them are men. But I think sometimes in nursing where we feel like we may be at a bit of a disadvantage is people don't realize how much science is actually involved in nursing and how much we need to understand about the human body and how every single time that you go in to take care of a patient, it really is like your own little mini research project. You have to do all the investigating and try different things to see how your patient best responds. So I think one of my goals with my students and my incoming students is always to impress upon them, yes, you have to have a heart to care about people, but you also really have to be curious and inquisitive and have that scientific mind behind that as well. And then it's just one more note about women in nursing and our profession overall. Even though there are 4 million of us, there's only 3 nurses currently serving in the United States Congress. So we're still very underrepresented at a lot of the discussions. Although we're such a large proportion of the workforce and the population in the United States, our voice is still very quiet sometimes. And I think another one of my frustrations that my colleagues in nursing might share with me is some of the publicity that we've gotten prior to COVID. I think people realize we're kind of the Swiss Army knife of healthcare. We will find a million ways to save your life. But prior to that, some of the comments about being the doctor's handmaid, or we didn't know nurses use stethoscopes. I think there's a very big misperception out there about what nurses are and what we do every day as far as taking care of patients. So that's one of the things I really try to encourage my students to dispel some of those beliefs that people hold about nursing, and try to help people to understand too just how much is involved in taking care of people and how much science is involved in it as well.
Thank you for that very much. Okay, our next panelist will be Dr. Jingzi Zhang from economics.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for attending today's event. And so when Steve invited me to be on the panel, I was thinking I have to educate people a little bit about why economics belong to STEM. So of course, when you think about economics, you're thinking it should belong to social science. But actually it depends on which area you're in. So I'm in the quantitative economics. So basically we are using statistical analysis to analyzing the economic phenomena. So we actually belong to the STEM. And so for my opening speech, I want to talk about my personal experience being an economist. And so I earned my doctoral degree in economics from Washington State University. So I remember we have about 11 cohort entered in the PhD program in 2013, and 11 of us graduated within 4 years. So among 11 of us, we have a 6 male student and a 5 female. Not bad, right? Almost equal. And then about my dissertation committee, I have a co-chair, so 1 female and 1 male. And then my committee member plus 1 committee member, which is a female. So which is good, right? 2 versus 2 to 1. And then, but I then look at the PhD program professors. Among 16 economic professors, we have 11 male and 5 female. So a little bit off balance there. And then also in my department, we have 3 economists. We have 2 male and 1 female. And so my personal experience regarding in this field is I actually never felt to be discriminated due to my gender. And actually, I got a lot of support from my professors and colleagues. So the question is, if I'm the lucky one, I think so. And also, I think I purposely also try to create an environment that I can find a role model. So for instance, my PhD dissertation, I had a male and female co-advisors. And so being a researcher in this field, being an economist, so obviously I can not use my personal experience representing the whole climate. So actually there's a lot of economists to study the climate for the economists. And actually it is not surprising, and they actually find that the female are less represented. When I go to the big giant conferences, majority of people I see are male instead of female. So actually a Harvard professor called Claudia Golding, and she actually point out that among 100 U.S. universities that train most of our graduate students from U.S. institutions, so there are more than 2 undergraduate men majoring in economics for every 1 woman. So basically, when I go into this relatively higher end, which is PhD field, I didn't see a lot of female. It's not surprising because it's happening on the undergraduate level. And so there is a professor in Harvard too, they study why is that happening. And then they actually noticed that for the female student, if they got A- in econ, they are very likely to drop the class. So they are pursuing A. And for the male student, even they got a C, they still want to pursue that. So it seemed like naturally there were some internal differences there. So how are we going to encouraging the undergraduate student, female student, pursue the economic degrees? So that's a challenging, but there is a key that is try once you see the student didn't perform well in the econ class, just go to talk to them. And also luckily I was one of the female economists, so I will be the role model for my student to encouraging the female economists to pursue this degree. And another thing I want to point out is back to 2019. So American Economic Association actually carried on the survey. And there is about 9,000 respondents, so 9,000 economists. So there are graduate students or who already graduate, a professor, assistant professor, full professor. So their result actually indicate that 22% of the tenure and the tenure track faculty in economics are women. So basically the rest of them are men. And so female definitely less represented. And also in that survey, the respondent also mentioned that women are more likely to experience sex discrimination. Women are also substantially more likely to experience discrimination based on the marital status, caregiving responsibility, age, place of employment, and based on research topics, etc. So just try to conclude my speech is I'm the lucky one because I was lucky enough entering the environment that I never feel the discrimination. But the fact is, in the economic field, we do see a huge gender balance. So to remember the first speaker talk about the role model. So that's a big challenge in our field is how can we really encouraging our female undergrad to pursue the economics degree, and how can we in such an unbalanced environment, how me being a female economist to give the encouragement to my female economic major student, it is very, very crucial. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next panelist is Dr. Mary McDade from Health and Phys Ed.
Thank you, Steve. I'm Dr. Mary McDade. I teach here in Health and Phys Ed, but more so I wanted to talk about being a certified athletic trainer for the last 30 years, because that is a profession where you take care of sports injuries. And for so many years, I graduated in 1990 from Penn State, and thank goodness on the college level, it was pretty equal, male and female athletic trainers that either taught my classes or when we went into the training room, they were our supervisors. But I think at that time, nationwide, I think less than 45% of athletic trainers were females. The nice thing now in 2021, it has flip-flopped. 55% of the athletic trainers out there are females. And so, you know, I saw the high school and the college level, but I've never moved on to the pro level. That just wasn't my interest. I've always wanted to be a professor since I was in undergrad. So for the 12 years that I was out in the field after my Penn State experience, I was at local high schools. I was the athletic trainer for 4 years at Northwestern, 4 years at Northeast, and 8 years at Jenna McLean. And I never saw a discrimination or any imbalance between men and women being out there as athletic trainers, taking care of student athletes and their injuries. And like I said, I didn't see that on the college level either at Penn State. It was pretty equal for a big Division I school. But where we do see that imbalance is with pro sports. Not until, and I'm not sure about NBA and Major League Baseball, but I'm a big football fan. And I played football, tackle football, women's football for 11 years. So I'm a big football fan. And so I've seen it on the NFL level with athletic trainers being female and not being represented on the NFL level. And so from what I can remember, the first full-time certified athletic trainer that got hired on the NFL level for pro football was in 2002, and it was from the Pittsburgh Steelers. For those of you that are North or Western Pennsylvania natives, or you like the Steelers. So from what I can remember, and it was a Penn State grad that hired her, in 2002. Well, here we are almost 20 years later, and last month in February for the Super Bowl, we were recognizing 6 women that were involved in NFL pro football, but we were recognizing them because it doesn't happen often. And I know many of you heard about the 3 women coaches and Sarah Thomas, the referee, but not a lot of people heard that there were 2 certified athletic trainers that were with the Kansas City Chiefs. The one got hired in 2016, and the other young lady got hired in 2018. So just in the last 20 years, have we seen athletic trainers that are female on the pro level, especially in professional football. So, like I said a few minutes ago, I really didn't see that imbalance at Penn State on the collegiate level or on the high school level. It was pretty equal. But now that we are swinging the other way, where I said a minute ago that 55% of certified athletic trainers are now female, more than half, we are seeing that representation now on the pro level. So I will have to do a little research myself now and look at Major League Baseball and look at the NBA also and see, even though it's a male sport, we're seeing more women in those roles, especially sports medicine and athletic training.
Thank you, Dr. McDade.
You're welcome.
Okay. We have 2 more panelists, both from social work. Dr. Christine Ryan will be next up.
Hi, thank you for having me. I think I share a lot of the experiences that the other panelists from nursing had talked about. So unlike some folks from math, economics, and training, we certainly have more women in social work, whether that be in practice or in academia. We have more female students. It's about 83% female dominated. And I see that throughout. So again, more students as well as in academia and in practice settings. The difference that I have seen is that in practice settings, males tend to be in more administrative roles, supervisory, managerial roles, and sometimes in settings that maybe they got into that because of whatever job postings might have been available, but really where some kind of physical prowess might be an advantage. So working in, juvenile detention centers and things of that nature. So I think that professionally for us as a profession in social work, that it's important to recruit more men because it helps our pay. So quite frankly, that's the truth of the matter. It helps our pay, and so why not? My husband is a social worker. I didn't talk him into it just to help increase the pay for social workers. But I think that many men are a bit hesitant to get into the field. It's seen as a feminine kind of role. But like someone else had mentioned, that sometimes people can easily miss the science part of it, that there is a lot of science involved. It's not just, caring for people and wanting to help people. There's science behind what we do and why we do what we do, and specifically how we do interventions. So I definitely feel that. I think that we also suffer from a perception problem, not only in terms of the gender aspect, but just in terms of people having a clear sense of what a social worker can do. I think that if it was more obvious as to what we do and the different fields that we can be in, we might have more males in our profession. I didn't suffer from a lack of mentors along the way. I was thinking about it as other folks were talking. I have never had a male supervisor in practice ever. I didn't realize that until I was sitting here listening to other people talk. And I don't know, I guess that's just particular, to having a discipline with so many females. So I guess I don't have much to say about what that would be like because I haven't had that. So I think that one of the things that I can say that's maybe more specific to academia is that, yes, the rates are similar in terms of male and female and the types of roles that folks have, but it does strike me that more and more women are going for the graduate degrees in social work, yet we're still not seeing the numbers rise in academia. So hopefully that will be something that we'll see in the future and that will change eventually. Not because, I mean, certainly the numbers are split right along what one might expect with 83% female, but I don't think a lot of women are interested in going into academia. And I know that I have some colleagues who feel that it wasn't the best kind of move for their family life, really being at the juncture of making some kind of decisions like that. More females in social work leave academic positions than not. So, and I think that might be true across academia in general. So I guess that's all I have to say to start out with.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. And our final panelist is Dr. Elaine Renfret, also from social work.
Well, I would have to say that I'm over prepared, so I have to think about what I want to say and what I don't want to say. But
we have time to spare, by the way.
Okay. So as far as the science of social work, I would make a comment that the perception of social work, again, like nursing, is grossly misunderstood with the advent of modern techniques in medicine, especially. I think that social work is very, very much dependent on neuroscience to understand what happens to people, because frankly, we treat people who are in distress, and neuroscience and distress go together. So that's a complicated area to understand, and we really expect our students to be well versed in that area, as well as in the biological in general. So we have that. And I think what Dr. Ryan mentioned that is sometimes, is unfortunate, that sometimes impacts our colleagues from pursuing the doctoral level degree is women's perception of math, that when they hear that they are required to take 2 or 3 courses in advanced statistics, they freak out and they think, oh my God, I can't do that. That'll keep me out of the program, forget it. And, I try to tell them, look, if I can do it, you can do it. But that's very unfortunate that girls and, from a young age on are not better or more confident in their math skills. And I think that's improving, but certainly some of the older girls and young women are still very intimidated by math, and that keeps them from advancing in the field. So I do want to comment that that's an unfortunate thing that we see too often. Can you still see me?
Yes, yes, we
Okay.
can.
I put something up that kind of remind me what the heck I wanted to say. So the other part of the issue, some of the other issues that I was going to mention is what Dr. Ryan mentioned, is that our field is seen as very female oriented. We have that big female male discrepancy. And I think we're inhibited by the fact that women are seen as caring, and that's feminization of the profession. And men are more socialized to care, or supposedly anyway, care about money and making a living and caring for their families monetarily. And the profession isn't certainly one of the highest paying. So I looked at the data from the Department of Labor Statistics for 2019, and the median pay for the average social worker was just about $55,000 per year. So that's not, in my opinion, not bad, but it certainly doesn't, it's not what a lawyer makes or a physician makes. But that was the 2019 median pay, and that had gone up about $10,000 a year from 2015. It's a growth industry. There's a 13% expectation of growth over the next 10 years, which again, the Department of Labor says is faster than average. So, if you want a job and you care about making people's lives better, social work certainly is an area that would fit for you. But we do have that kind of problem with a discrepancy in, even though it's a female dominated profession, men make more money, even though there are way fewer men in the field. In every single area of practice, men make more money, which is disconcerting. And this is what I was hoping that I can figure out how to display just to show you. Can you see this?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, Chris, hold the horses and I will do something hopefully to make that happen.
I think we're all supposed to be functionally co-hosts here, but
well, that would mean you know that one is good at this. Wait a minute. So here, share screen. And here it is, I think. Come on. How about now?
Something started. Yes, we've got it.
Isn't that excellent? So, so this is from the National Association of Social Workers. That is a big part of the social work field that helps us be professional, I guess. And they looked at salaries of social workers by gender and area of practice. So the blue is men and the red is women. And here in the middle of each scale is the median salary. So this is for social workers who are in private practice by themselves. And you can see the median salary, but you can see that men make more. Interesting. Here it is for folks who work in mental health clinics and outpatient facilities, which is a huge area of practice, mental health treatment. Men make more. Hospital social workers and other medical facilities, men make more, even, at every level. These are very popular areas of practice. School social workers, same thing across the board. What do we have here? Social service agencies, nothing different there. Group practices, nothing different there. Wait, I'm waiting for something different. Colleges and universities where we are, same thing. And hospice and palliative care. Tell me when you see something different so I can be happy. Health clinics and outpatient facilities, I'm still not happy. Government agencies, you'd think maybe there'd be a little more difference, but no, it's not different. Psychiatric hospitals, still men make more. So across the board, in the major areas where you'll find social workers in practice, even though we see a significant difference in the number of men who are in the field versus women, there is that discrepancy. There is still in a female-dominated profession a glass ceiling for women, it seems, and that is, in my opinion, unfortunate. I think that there's still this cultural issue of men being seen as better at being administrators, executives, agency, board of directors, any of those kinds of positions that Dr. Ryan mentioned before, and they apply for or are sought after for those positions. So I think that that's an area that the profession needs to address. I think that more men need to be in the field because we need more men to balance the type of services that we provide. We provide so many different types of services to families. A big portion of what we provide, whether it's mental health services, services to children, or straightforward counseling that men are involved in. Sometimes men, or oftentimes I think, men would respond better with a male perspective in that situation. So we really would benefit from having more men in the field, but we, as a profession that is, our basic tenet is social justice, and to provide social justice for all social workers, male and female, would seem to be something very important that we seriously need to work on. And economic social justice is one of those areas. I also think that Dr. Ryan mentioned that educating the public about all the various areas that social workers are able and do work in is another important piece that we need to do that would attract more candidates into the field. And I think the other huge issue in the field is that, I don't know the number on this, I should have looked it up, but the vast majority of people in our field are white, and we treat and serve and put a lot of effort into helping families or individuals of color, and we need more people of color in the field to provide that service. And we need to recruit from those racial and ethnic groups to balance that out, and certainly from men in those groups. So we have a lot of work to do to make our profession better, not only for women, but for men as well.
Thank you, Dr. Renfret. I do want to say that other panelists didn't speak as long as they were entitled to, and I want to give them a chance to say more than they said before prior to turning things over to the audience for questions. I know that some of the panelists, other panelists, have already made some really interesting chat box comments, and I'm wondering if they would like to voice them. Professor Farbatnik, you had an interesting point about nursing in comparison with social work. Do you mind sharing it?
Yeah, I think that, and I know Elaine and I have worked on some committees together, and we've talked about the bonds of nursing and social work, and I think we struggle with a lot of the same issues, and also the importance of recruiting men to nursing. But I just while Dr. Rimfret was speaking, I did do a quick search on men and salaries in nursing, and I had suspected the trend would be the same. And it was a 2018 report that I found, averaging about $7,000 more per year for our men in nursing versus women. But another interesting note is that men were more likely to negotiate for their initial salary. And I think that is a good takeaway. And that's something I encourage my nursing students to do as well, is you have to know your worth. And it's okay to come back with a number. And it took me a lot of years to figure that out. And so I try to encourage my new nurses right out of the gate that you're a high commodity, high demand commodity right now. We are going to be 1.5 million nurses short by 2025. So they need you a lot more than you need them. So don't underestimate your value and your education and the hard work you've put into this. So I think there's opportunity there too, just to encourage nurses to advocate for themselves more. And one other point I want to make, because I sometimes feel bad in nursing, it's almost been reverse sexism. And I love Florence Nightingale. She's absolutely one of my favorite historical nurses. And I'm a big history nerd about nursing, but she kind of started that pattern, because initially in nursing, she wouldn't allow men to enter her school of nursing. And when she did allow them to enter, she said their only role would be in the psychiatric units. And we find that to be true today. There's a higher percentage of men working in the psychiatric field of nursing than there are other areas. So it's just interesting to see the patterns and the trends over time.
Thank you for that. Dr. Ryan, do you want to jump in and say something that you had mentioned in the chat box? I don't mean to pressure you, but you asked a good question.
Yeah, actually, and this might apply to others as well, but when Lane was showing those slides, it seemed to me like when we saw school social workers, meaning K through 12, and a little bit with the hospice, it seemed like the numbers were a lot closer between men and women. And when I initially saw those schools, I thought, okay, is it because they're unionized? Is that an influence? I know that social workers being in hospice is a federal mandate, so we got to be there, right? So I wonder if any of those components help with that, for social work or for others, if you see that in your other disciplines such as nursing.
Does anybody else want to respond to that, or to make any final comments before we turn things over to the audience?
I just want to add a little bit on the salary. I'm so blessed that Dr. Rimfret, she's showing those like bar chart. And so we see the trend. So obviously female are usually make less than the male across all field, in my field too. And so being an economist, we're not just looking at number, we're also exploring why people making that choice. Obviously, we see the differences. So why females still jump into work in that field, willing to take lower salary. So one thing is Beth mentioned about negotiation. So when they starting the job, they don't negotiate because women want to check 10 boxes before they say I'm good. So they all feel like they are not good, but it's different for male. They are usually risk taker. They only check 3 boxes. They say, I'm going to do an excellent job. Seems like it's born with the nature. So that's one thing. And the second is I read a few research papers before. They're actually looking at the corporate environment. And so usually the high paid jobs, so the way they evaluating the employee are really different. They based on such as whether you can work a very long time, whether you don't require flexibility. And so for female, we are a caregiver. We take care of families, we cooking food, care of our kids. So we basically have a second job in our personal lives. So when the corporate job required that way to evaluating us, we naturally don't get as much bonus as male. So basically what I want to point out is to close that gap. It is not just encouraging women, oh, you should negotiate the salary, you should do more work. So instead, it's the whole company environment or working environment that has to consider, okay, women has another task on their plate. So how can we create an environment so that they don't really have to worry too much their family life, at the same time they can fully use their talent to help to grow the organization. I think that piece is usually forgot. And it's like when they see the wage gap, they are just thinking, oh, women doesn't want to ask. It's not the case because we have another part of life we have to take care of, but the big organization, they usually didn't realize that. So the incentive policies, etc., they didn't include in that part. So that's why that's one of the drive to see to widen that gap. If you look at the bar chart, as you go to the 75 percentile, so the gap become even wider because how the big organization they are evaluating their employee make the female hesitate to take those jobs.
Thank you for that. I think we should turn things over now to the audience. Chris LaFuria, can you remind us of how the audience can ask questions of the panel?
Yes, we
go ahead,
have
Chris.
the questions section established in the comment section of our YouTube, and it looks like we have about 5 questions that have come in so far. So if you're comfortable with it, I can ask the questions, and then whoever is interested can go with the answers from there. So if that's easy enough for everybody else, we can get going from there.
Let's do that, Chris. I can't see the questions, so you might as well take over and do that. Thank you for
Absolutely. And this is one of those things where if you'd like to take turns, if we don't need to raise our hands or anything, you can just kind of jump in, make it more conversational. A lot of these questions, or some of these questions are specific, but a lot are for STEM fields overall. The first question is, and you touched on this a little bit about making networks, establishing relationships with mentors, but what advice do you have for young professionals who are just starting their careers in traditionally male-dominated fields? How can these individuals connect with a mentor in that field? So what advice do you have for these young professionals?
And that's for all the speakers.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I have a comment on that. We in the math and computer science department, we've had a like kind of a lunch group, a women in STEM lunch group, and just kind of invited anybody we know who takes math classes. Like if I'm teaching Calc 2, I try to announce it to my class so that, you know, the biology, we bring in physics majors and anybody who wants to come to just try to establish a group and have lunch. Obviously, since COVID, that has kind of been a flop, you know, but hopefully we'll get back into it once we get back onto campus. And kind of had some nights to just kind of like, we have potluck and night, you know, to just kind of like get to know each other a little bit and kind of have some role models. I think if you have an opportunity to do something like that, the first step is just to accept the invitation. You know, if you're present at this panel tonight, you're taking a step in the right direction. You just gotta try to network as much as possible so that you can find somebody.
Very good. Did anybody else have anything to add to that one?
Yeah,
do.
well, pardon me.
Go ahead.
With athletic training, it's so nice on the college level when you're a student, because you don't only see your professors in the classroom, but you also have to work with them with sports teams. So I think it's much more easy for women in collegiate settings getting their degrees, that they'll have at least 1 or 2 role models that at some point they'll work with in the athletic training room that are female. So they really have to take advantage of that. And I can say 30 years later, I was kind of quiet and shy my sophomore year when I first got into the program. But then by the time I was a junior and senior, I felt more willing to talk to those female role models. And so I think for athletic training in particular, and it's switching to a master's degree. And so master's degrees are usually even smaller, the cohorts, than undergrads. I think women will have a good opportunity as certified athletic trainers to look up to female role models while they're in school and in that master's program.
Thank you so much for that. And then the final comment on this topic, Dr. Rinfret.
Oh, I was just going to echo what Dr. Baker said in that if there isn't something already in place, start it, because I have had 2 separate experiences with that. One as a doctoral student where I felt like if I dropped dead on campus, no one would even notice I was missing, and started a support group there. And also when I was chair of my department and was like, I don't know how to be chair. Started a support it was a group of for me, it was a support group, but it was a chairs monthly meeting to just, share issues. And they were really mentors for me. So there wasn't anything, but I tried to create it myself. So if it's not there, see if you can do it. Don't feel that you can't, because I think a lot of times other people are looking for the same thing. It just takes somebody to get the ball rolling.
All right, very good. The next question isn't so much about the professional field, but about STEM in general. We have an individual who's an early childhood education major. How would you recommend that this individual encourages long-lasting positive relationships between girls and STEM? So this could be either at a young age or at high school or during college. How do you work to establish that relationship between girls and STEM?
I have a comment if nobody else does. I don't want to jump in again, but that's something I'm really passionate about. When I teach some of the math for elementary ed classes, and I try to tell them, if you hate math, make that your deepest, darkest secret in your classroom. Don't ever tell your students at the elementary level that you don't like math, that you're not good at math, anything. And I don't care if it's just you personally, you're their role model. So you saying, oh, I could never do math, I wasn't good at math, it resonates with those little kids in their mind. And you don't want to get in their mind and have them think that they can't do it. So even if you don't like it, put on an act, put on a happy face.
That's what I try to share with my nursing students too. And I always laugh that I didn't know how much I loved math until I had Dr. Ann Quinn coming back for my BSN. And I was like, oh, I really love math. Like, math is great. And so I try to impress that upon my nursing students. And because we have to do a ton of math in nursing, and there's a lot of science behind it too, as I've already mentioned. And so I try to show a lot of excitement about it. And I think from a nursing standpoint, why math is so fun for me is there's always an exact answer. And it's one of the few times when you're taking care of people where there's like, nope, there's an answer and that's the number. So.
All right, any last comments on that question? All right, the next one, and this one's kind of interesting. We see the term STEM used a lot, but I know there's a lot of push in schools to refocus it more towards STEAM. And that A, of course, is standing for arts. Do you think that arts should be included in the push for STEM? A lot of people have a tendency of excluding the A. What are your thoughts on making that part of the phrase?
I teach some 11th and 12th graders at the Charter School of Excellence. And I teach them a sports ethics class that we teach here in health and phys ed, and they can earn 3 credits from Edinburgh. And I love to see the A, the arts, because some of those kids are just so talented. And I wanted to be anatomy book illustrator when I was younger, and then I realized how awful my drawing was. But just some of those kids are so talented, my 11th and 12th graders, they're 16, 17 years old. And it's nice to see that A part, the art part, because there are so many directions that kids could go, and you wouldn't even think about it. Who thinks that, oh, I want to be, an anatomy book illustrator? And that's one of my favorite courses I've ever taught, is neuromuscular skeletal anatomy. And so I like now that some people are pushing to put that A in there, because there's just such talented young teenagers out there.
Yeah, and I will add too, hopefully she's watching. If not, she'll find on Facebook, but Professor Michelle Vitale does a lot of work with illustration, and she does a lot of the scientific illustration. She does a lot with insects in the field and things like that. So I think there are a lot of, to use a pun, a lot of natural ways to do that. So, and I think it's one of those things where once, we start figuring out how to integrate all this together, it kind of finds our natural path. So that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. Anybody else have any final thoughts on STEAM? All right, Beth, I saw you unmute. Were you about to say something, or?
No, I have to echo your statement that too, when we incorporate that creative side of our brain, it really helps us just be more well-rounded and fulfilled. And sometimes it's sad for me when I hear things like art programs being cut, which I think we're moving away from that trend now. But I think as we see more and more research, we'll see how important that creative side is, and that creativity, not just as far as the applications into science, but just overall for being a well-balanced human and for good mental health. I think it's really important to keep that at the forefront.
And I would say, again, echoing what you're saying, is that we have art therapy as a discipline now, and I think about for nursing, like creating things like Resuscitator Annie. Someone had to design that. So design for medical equipment or things that help us teach. There's so much that art can do in the sciences that I think it does deserve a place.
Yeah, and if I could quote a less than scientific publication, but in the show The Office, when they were doing the resuscitation scene using the song "Staying Alive," you're kind of incorporating a song into the scientific field. So there's simple ways from that as well. And also when you get to playing like orchestral music, there's a lot of mathematical approaches you can take to reading that music as well. So very interesting.
Chris, could you sing that song for us at the end?
As soon as the live stream is over, if you want to stick around for that, possibly.
Okay, fair enough.
One question that just came in. Do you think? I mean, we did talk a lot, and I know Dr. Rinfret showed a lot of the statistics and charts and everything. But do you think that the representation of women in STEM is improving? Are there any barriers that you think society needs to overcome in order for women to attain more equality? So where are we right now, and what do you predict is the trajectory of women in STEM? Do you see it improving, or what kind of barriers exist?
I actually got the stats to support, and I think STEM in general, they exclude economics. Like I said, economic in general is not, but certain field belong to STEM. But STEM itself, actually, for the between 1995 to 2014, and the percentage of women has to increase from 40.6% to 55.7%. So it is increasing, but obviously it depends on where is your criteria. Maybe it's improving, but it's not. Maybe it is not as good as everybody are thinking, because it's like 20 years. Yeah, 20 years. Yes, only improved by about 10%, 15%.
I'd like to add that I do think that there is a serious barrier that maybe is changing, but I had read a statistic that said of all tenured college faculty, regardless of STEM or whatever, of all tenured faculty, 70% of the males were parents. 40% of the females were parents. That's a huge gap. And this kind of got mentioned earlier. It's really hard to have a family and balance that, because the time that naturally we have family, we're going to grad school, and it's like, no, you can't get married, you can't have a baby until you get your PhD. You got to get this dissertation done. You got to get this done. And then you land a job, because you can't take time off, because that's not good for getting a job. Then you land a job, and then they're like, you got to keep working until you get tenure, and then you can think about it. And so it drives some women out of academia. And some people just kind of give up, get burnt out. And some people don't return, because if you leave your job, you have to reset that tenure track clock again. So you have to work so hard to get back to where you were. It's discouraging. At the university, we do not have paid maternity leave. I mean, that's kind of crazy, right? I mean, you hear the big, Google and the big tech companies doing that, but yet, like, I think of working at a university as being kind of a trending place, and to not have paid maternity leave, like, it's kind of crazy. when my daughter was born, I had to use my sick days. Like I used FMLA so that I didn't lose my job. But HR said that, you know, you should do that to cover yourself so you don't get fired for having a baby, which I kind of blew my mind. That would even be, you know, on their radar. But I had to use my accumulated sick time, which kind of blew my mind. So, you know, I think that that is an obstacle standing in the way, and I would like to see things change in that front.
All right, and I think we had one more question come in, so I think we're doing okay on time. This looks like a time to just, I guess, remind everyone, if you do have questions, you can submit them in the chat. But also, if we do run out of time and you think of questions afterwards, feel free to continue to add them to the comments, and we'll make sure they get directed to the right person. And then we'll make sure we get them answered, or we can put you in contact with some of the panelists as well. One question that was kind of interesting that came in, talking about struggles and overcoming them as well. Was there ever a point in your career or while you were studying that you struggled personally with studying or staying in that STEM field? And then what did you do to overcome that? And that could be anything from you know, working in the field or the STEM field in general, or anything throughout your career or your academics.
Sure, I could give that a shot. From the PhD school perspective, which I refer to as the program, if I developed a close cohort of that became my support system, and if it wasn't for that, I know that I probably would not have made it through. Elaine Rinfret has been my colleague, and we began as friends going through the program. And our friendship has remained 20-something years later, right, Elaine? So I think that I can't say how I mean, it's hugely important just to have other people to bounce ideas off of, call them at odd times of the day or night, to voice your frustration, to vent, to do what you have to do. And those networks have lasted throughout my career. So I'm very thankful for that, and I think that's very important.
I would add to what Dr. Ryan said, which I alluded to with what Dr. Baker said, is that the advanced statistical courses that I had to take were very difficult. And if I didn't have the cohort that Dr. Ryan just referred to, I would have lost my mind. So I think that is a really important, support is really important. I had very good professors who were very kind and patient, but my cohort meant a lot to me and pulled me through a great deal of distress. And having maintained that cohort, at least part of it, also through what other people have mentioned, the tenure track, what do you call that? I don't know, like train ride or whatever it is, to publish and do research and all that. So I think that those things are really important to have support.
Can I add a little bit? Because I grew up in China, so I'm the only child in the family because the one-child policy. So basically, my parents' expectation is I need to compete with boys. So I never feel I'm actually when I was in school, I was good at math and physics, and I never feel like, although I know that society-wise they do love the boy than the girls, but I know myself so well that I never feel anybody can really beat me up. I always beat out other boys, and I'm good at math and physics. I think I carried the same idea came to the United States, and I know in my field it's more male than a female, but I never feel I'm different from male. I think that part of confidence is something we can grow on ourselves, because as I mentioned before, the corporation policies, etc. So obviously you becoming player, you went to the corporation, you can change in the rule. But before you can go in there, and obviously you're going to fit in the rule, I think the big task for us is how to make ourselves stronger, to believe in yourself. So we know we need to check 10 boxes to see we're really good at it. But how about we just try to meet 8 boxes and then we just go for it to do it. I think we need that brave so that we can make ourselves in a certain level and then to changing the culture. I think that's very important. So we need the support, but also at the same time, I think ourselves has grown really strong. I learned that by growing up in China, because I know I cannot change in the society. The only thing I can do is just make myself stronger.
Chris, it might be time to wrap things up. We're past our 1 hour approximate deadline. Could I make some concluding remarks before we go?
Yeah, that sounds great. If we want to wrap up, we're right about 5 after 8, so we should be good to go.
Yeah. First of all, I just wanted to thank all the panelists. I really appreciate their taking part, and I hope we can do this again down the road. Second of all, I'd like to thank the audience. I can't see the audience. I know they're out there, but I know we have a much bigger audience than usual in face-to-face, thanks to the wonders of YouTube. And I really want to thank Chris LaFuria and Kristen Brockett for all they've done to make this happen, and Chris for a superb job as a moderator for the Q&A. If people do have questions or comments, please feel free to contact us. I think I speak for the panelists in that regard. We all have Edinburgh University email addresses, generally first initial and then last name. It's been fun. I hope it was a worthwhile time for you. If you know somebody that wanted to attend but was unable to, I'm told by Chris and Kristen that there'll be a video linkage, a link available by tomorrow, and so you can watch the video of this event anytime into the indefinite future. And that's all I've got. Chris, did you want to say anything to the audience? I know.
Yeah, just a quick reminder. We do have the. I will post an email address in the YouTube comments for questions. If anybody has a more private question that they don't want to ask in the public comment section, they can email us directly, and we'll make sure that gets to the right person. So I'll make sure that's in the chat. The